Okay, so yesterday we were looking at key concept 1.1, and today we're going to be looking at key concept 1.2. So we're on our day 2 notes. And 1.2 says, beginning about 10,000 years ago, some human communities adopted sedentism and agriculture. So I want to kind of help you guys with your mental timeline here. Okay, if we're talking about 10,000 years ago, that was the year 8,000 BCE, okay? 8,000 BCE. Yesterday, we didn't really talk about what a specific year because we were talking about thousands of years of evolution yesterday. But from now on, we'll kind of always try to put a date to what we're learning. Yes? Okay, so it says that some human communities adopted sedentism, but what is sedentism? Okay, it's really important this year that you work on expanding your vocabulary and building your vocabulary. So if you couldn't define what sedentism is, you should write it down right now in your notes, okay, which is why I'm displaying it right now. All right, so sedentism refers to the practice of living in one place for a long time. Okay, so what this is saying is that some human communities stayed in a place for a really long time and therefore just started to develop agriculture, while other human communities continued to pursue hunter-forager lifestyles, hunter-gatherers like we talked about yesterday, or pastoralist lifestyles. Okay, but what does pastoralist mean? Okay, pastoralism is a subsistence pattern in which people make their living by tending herds of large animals. All right, so once you get pastoralism down, let's go back to the key concept. Okay, so basically what this key concept is saying is that in 8,000 BCE, human beings started to live different lifestyles. Some started to develop agriculture because they were living in one place year-round. Others continued to be hunter-gatherers or perhaps adopted pastoralist lifestyles. But those different groups developed in different ways, and there were social and demographic impacts that affected them differently. Okay, so I have demographic up here as well, and my AP Hub and Geo kids, you guys might be pretty familiar with demographic, but demographic has to do with populations. If you see that word demographic, I want you to think population. Okay, or demography, it means population. So write it down if you need to. Okay, so item number 1 says, the Neolithic Revolution led to the development of more complex economic and social systems. And my brain might decide to highlight Neolithic Revolution because we know that's important. It's one of our key terms. Okay, and in case you don't know, the Neolithic Revolution is the same thing as the agricultural revolution. Okay, Neolithic and agricultural revolutions are the exact same thing. And they led to a more complex society. So let's zoom in on this graphic here. This is what we were talking about yesterday, the hunter-gathering bands. Okay, beginning about 2 million BC, early people started to develop tools, learn to use fire. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Today we're going to focus in on this green band within our graphic, okay, the growth of villages. And again, we have that year, 8,000 BCE. This is when people started to settle in one place and they started to develop agriculture. So there were breakthroughs in farming technology. They also learned to domesticate animals, okay? And this led to food surpluses, okay? Why is a food surplus a good thing? Right, you can support more people. Very good, thank you. Okay, with more food, you can support more people. And we're going to see that pattern repeat itself over and over in world history. When there are advancements that allow for more food, you can have more people. Okay, so this leads to civilization. When we were hunter-gatherers, everyone had to either hunt or gather. That was it. There were no other jobs in society. You were either a hunter or a gatherer. But with the development and adoption of agriculture and food surpluses, suddenly that frees up a lot of time because we don't need everybody to be farmers. There's plenty of food. And so we start to see job specialization, which means that now suddenly people can specialize in fighting. And we see that people become soldiers or warriors. Or other people might start to specialize in religion and they become priests. Okay, and we'll talk more about this. Okay, part A says, possibly as a response to climate change, permanent agricultural villages emerged first in the lands of the Eastern Mediterranean, okay? But agriculture emerged independently in a lot of different places, okay? And the first ones that we're going to talk about are Mesopotamia, the Nile River Valley, the Indus River Valley, and the Yellow River Valley, okay? Those are our main 4 early civilizations that we're going to talk about. We'll hit on the others as well, but there are first. Okay, so here's a map, and if we zoom in, we see these centers of early agriculture. Okay, I will explain why Iron Man's face is there, I promise. Okay, I didn't make this map. This map actually comes from a website that some of you might decide to use frequently throughout this year. It's called Freemanpedia. Mr. Freeman is another AP World History teacher. He lives in Virginia, and he has a whole website, and he made this map. We'll get to the Iron Man reference in a few days. But for now, what I want you guys to focus on are these centers of agriculture, okay? So we have the Nile River Valley in Egypt. We have Mesopotamia, also known as the Fertile Crescent. We have the Indus River Valley in India and the Yellow River Valley in China. Okay. Part B says, people in each region domesticated locally available plants and animals. Okay, and it looks like a couple of my boxes are missing some information. It must not have downloaded correctly. But I'm going to zoom in because for most things in this class, you only need to write down or learn a couple of examples, because if this were on a short answer question where I'm asking you, provide an example of early domestication. Okay, you don't need to know all of them, but you do want to have a couple of examples, okay? So I'm going to pause right now and let you write down a few examples. All right, and again, you only need to write down a couple of different things. You don't have to memorize it all. So you might be wondering, like, how do we know where these different regions or what these different regions domesticated? And the answer is that archaeologists can learn a lot of information from artifacts that are left behind. So like if we zoom in on this painting from Egypt, clearly what kind of animals are we seeing here? Cows, right? Cattle. So we know that in Egypt, they must have domesticated cattle or they wouldn't have a painting like this. And if we look down here at this from Mesopotamia, we see not only cattle again, but what kind of plant does that look like? Maybe wheat, right? So archaeologists are able to determine which civilizations domesticated which plants and animals through the archaeological record. And this is the little green thing that you're seeing right here. It's known as a seal. It was a round cylinder that you could roll across clay in order to make a pattern, which I think is pretty cool. So, all right, so here is another map that shows us some of the agricultural hearths throughout the world and where certain plants were domesticated. So we have rice in East Asia, wheat in Mesopotamia, maize in Central America. And again, I mean, you already have written down some examples, so you don't necessarily need to write down more. But this is another example of a stimulus that you might see on a stimulus-based multiple choice question. We talked about that in most of the classes yesterday. On an AP test, you don't just have a standalone question. Every multiple choice question is going to be tied to a stimulus. And a stimulus could be a picture, a map, an excerpt. So you might see this map on a test or a quiz or on the AP exam, and then they're going to ask you some questions about time period 1. Okay, part C says, pastoralism developed in Afro-Eurasian grasslands. and it affected the environment in a variety of ways. So, okay, you guys all took geography last year. We just learned that pastoralists are basically raising herds of animals. How might that affect the environment? Talk about it at your table for just a second. On our pictures here, what we actually have, these are all modern pastoralists, okay? So if we zoom in here, we can see a little boy who's growing up in a pastoral lifestyle in Mongolia. We have examples from Peru, Nigeria, and Kenya. Okay, so pastoralism still exists in our world today. Okay, it has not died out. Not all human societies and cultures became sedentary. All right, and we're going to stop there for today because we are out of time.